Good morning to all. It's a pleasure being with you today. I'm going to provide you with a brief overview of some of the main policy instruments and initiatives that are of relevance to the subject of the workshop today. So we are going to briefly touch upon the European Green Deal and its main initiatives, and also then going through some of the tools to support the transition that we have at hand, as the Carbon Farming Initiative, the Common Agricultural Policy, and the Research and Innovation Policy. So if we go first to the European Green Deal, as you all know, the European Commission published it more than 1 year ago, and it sets the path for our collective efforts to make Europe the first climate neutral continent by 2050. Under the Green Deal, there are several strategies that have direct or indirect link with the agriculture and forestry sectors, including ambitious targets, principles, priorities, and actions. And as we will see, climate action is really at the core of those. If we look first at the Farms to Fork strategy, its ambition is to establish a sustainable food system that, among others, has neutral or positive environmental impact of food production. So under the Farm to Fork strategy, there are several initiatives and several targets, but important to mention is that it announces a new EU carbon farming initiative that aims at promoting this new business model and to provide farmers with a new source of income. The strategy is also calling for boosting sustainable practices such as precision agriculture, agroecology, including organic farming, carbon farming, and agroforestry as tools that can help achieve these targets. If we now look at the EU Biodiversity Strategy, the objective is really to put Europe on the path to ecological recovery by 2030. As you can see on the slide, there are several targets and several ambitions under the biodiversity strategy. But we have, for instance, the objective that at least 25% of agricultural land is under organic farming management, and that the uptake of agroecological practices is significantly increased. I think this is quite relevant for the topic of the workshop. Also, for instance, the ambition of planting 3 billion trees by 2030, and so on. Another important initiative under the Green Deal is the proposal for a climate law. It's aiming to write into law the goal for Europe to become climate neutral by 2050. And among the main aspects that we could highlight here, it sets a new EU target for 2030 of reducing greenhouse gas emission by at least 55% compared to the levels in 1990. Well, if you look at the emissions profile in 2050, you will see that the land sector is going to be very prominent. Agricultural emissions that you can see in green will be lower than today, but because of the almost complete decarbonization of other sectors and also the impossibility for agriculture to reduce emissions to zero, they will constitute still the majority of the remaining emissions. So to be on track for climate neutrality in 2050, it is clear that we need to increase the removals from the farming sector already in this decade. Of course, we can imagine that all these ambitions and all these targets are going to have pose new challenges to farmers, foresters, and rural communities. And at the same time, they will also be key actors in having a central role in addressing these challenges. So for the reasons, it's important to have the right tools at hand to support these actors. But of course, as you know, we are not starting from scratch here, and we already have several of these tools at our disposal. If we first look to the Carbon Farming Initiative, it is announced, as I mentioned earlier, by the Farm to Fork strategy. There is also the Circular Economy Action Plan announcing an EU regulatory framework for carbon removal certification. These initiatives are really important to build the mechanisms to certify and incentivize carbon removals, because these are crucial to achieve climate neutrality by 2050. This is very clear. By carbon farming, we mean a mechanism that rewards climate-friendly practices by individual farmers or forest managers through financial incentives. The slide gives some examples of this type of actions that can be considered as contributing to enhancing the carbon removals in the land sector. If we go briefly to the Commission actions in 2021, recently we completed a 2-year study on carbon farming. The study is going to be the basis of a technical guidance that is about to be published quite soon. In addition, we also have the LIFE program that is financing several projects that are testing carbon farming approaches on the ground. And also, there will be some work on improving monitoring tools for land-based removals. and including some of the existing tools that we have at hand. Last but not least, there will be also, of course, importance to take into consideration stakeholder inputs. There are going to be several workshops to discuss different aspects of carbon farming. And I think also this particular workshop today can also provide interesting insights into this discussion. If we now look at the Common Agricultural Policy, approximately 40% of the whole budget for the CAP is going to be climate relevant. There are, as you know, several aspects to take into consideration here. We will have the new green architecture, the enhanced conditionality. Also, the CAP plans, they are expected to play a key role in achieving environmental and climate targets under the CAP. And last but not least, the proposed eco schemes that you may have seen published recently are going to have a special focus on covering climate-related activities, and they need to demonstrate that they contribute to the Green Deal targets. So the carbon farming schemes that we discussed earlier fits quite well with the objectives of the new CAP. If we now go to the another of the important tools that we have at hand, this is the EU approach to agricultural research and innovation. Excuse me. So we have already since 2016 a strategy for agricultural research and innovation in the European Union. And already back then, we had already identified the key objectives that we have set for ourselves in the EU Green Deal. So we were already quite advanced by then. What is important to highlight in this slide is, of course, the close interaction between the European Research and Innovation Program, Horizon 2020, and the CAP through the European Innovation Partnership for Agricultural Productivity and Sustainability through different activities you can see on the slide. And what I also wanted to highlight here is the fact that on Horizon 2020, we have approximately 50% of the projects that are climate relevant. Many of these projects are multi-actor, so really ensuring that the end users are really embedded in the activities and that their concerns are taken into consideration genuinely from the beginning. So this is an important aspect, of course, in this context. If we now go to the successor of Horizon 2020, you have on the screen Horizon Europe, the structure of the new research and innovation program. The important cluster or the important pillar for us today, if you want, is pillar 2, and concretely cluster 6 on food, bioeconomy, natural resources, agriculture, and the environment. You can see it highlighted in green. But it's not the only one, because we will also have cluster 5 on climate, energy, and mobility. It's not going to focus on the agricultural sector, but it is also, of course, going to develop and to implement a number of important initiatives and activities aiming at achieving the targets set by the climate, the Green Deal. So it's also important to take into consideration. In terms of the tools that we have at our disposal to power the transition and to help us achieve these objectives under Horizon Europe, we will have, on one hand, of course, the calls for collaborative projects. These are going to be included in the first work program of Horizon Europe from 2021 to 2022 that we aim at publishing by May 2021. And here, if we look at one of the destinations in which we have divided cluster 6 of Horizon Europe, destination is really focusing on land, oceans, and water for climate action. The role for agroecological approaches, organic farming, agroforestry, in achieving climate objectives is going to be quite prominent, but we will also have other instruments at our disposal. We will also have missions, such as the proposed mission Caring for Soils is Caring for Life, that is expected to also have an important contribution in supporting new green business models like carbon sequestration by farmers and foresters. This is still under discussion, of course. And on the side of the partnerships, there are 49 different partnership candidates in the whole Horizon Europe. Under cluster 6, there are 8, and one of them is the one on accelerating farming systems transition, agroecology, living labs, and research infrastructures, whose objective is to accelerate the transition towards sustainable, climate and ecosystem-friendly farming practices by enabling to better grasp short to long-term agroecological processes from farm to landscape levels. This is, of course, another tool that is under development, under discussion with the member states, and we believe that it can also provide a key contribution to our climate and environmental objectives. But we have to put into play, let's say, all the different instruments that we have at our hand for this. So in conclusion, we have seen that the Green Deal is setting the path to climate neutrality by 2050. It means that it's going to pose opportunities, but also challenges for our farming, forestry, and rural areas. It is clear that our farmers, foresters, and rural communities are going to have a crucial role in achieving these targets and are going to be key actors that we need to keep, that they need to be really supported in achieving these objectives. We will have several tools at our disposal to support the transition. We will have the Common Agricultural Policy, the Carbon Farming Initiative, all EU policy initiatives, such as the new EU Forestry Strategy that I didn't cover in my presentation, but will also have, of course, an important contribution, but also national policies. We cannot forget about it. And last but not least, I didn't mention, but of course, research and innovation, as you know. The Green Deal is definitely a revolutionary project that requires an innovative vision. This is very clear. So what questions we could use for the discussion? We could discuss what research and innovation do we need to accelerate the progress towards climate neutrality by 2050. It would also be interesting to see how to maximize the impact of research and innovation on the ground, supporting farmers, foresters, and rural communities in this transition. We already have very good examples and successes in this regard, but what else could we do in this regard? So I thank you for your attention, and I wish you very fruitful discussions today. Thank you very much.